Let's look at the highest paid languages in the translation industry coming up. Hello and welcome back to the Freelanceverse. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming back to the channel once again. Today I thought I'd take a look at the highest paying languages for a translator. I already made this video 4 or 5 years ago, so I thought it's time for an updated version. As always, I took many different sources. I created my own list, so this is not based on any research, any one research made, but rather it's a compilation of things I found online and also from my own experience of talking to people. I think it's important to mention that the amount you can earn depends a lot on your language, but it's not everything, right? And it shouldn't be everything because you can't really. It's not your choice. You just you learn a language and you end up working in this language usually. So there's not much you can do about it. Of course, people do learn languages in order to work with them, which I find very impressive. I have not managed to do that by myself so far. All the languages I learn for myself. I mean, I can't even imagine actually working with them, but people do it. I know that also at the international institutions like the European Commission and Parliament, people are encouraged to learn new languages and then start working with it within a couple of years. So it's really impressive. And I think if you are gifted to learn new languages and you're really, if it's part of your workflow and part you're almost getting paid for it kind of, or at least the course is paid, then it can make sense to do that. But in general, we learn languages when we are smaller and then we end up translating in them. That's the same with me. I translate from English and French into German for a Swiss audience mostly, but also for Germans. And these are just the languages I learned in school, and that's it. I just want to mention that while it is important with which language you work in, it's not everything. Specialization, subject matter expertise is way more important. So you can work in the lowest paying languages, let's say, and still be an expert in a field, and you will still make a very nice living and be among the highest paid translators out there. Now, there is an important distinction to make. There's always a bit of a contradiction when it comes to high paying languages. There are languages out there that are very niche and are very highly paid. Examples are Icelandic, or Norwegian, a lot of Nordic languages, a lot of African languages that are very rare, very hard to find translators for. While these are technically the highest paid languages, I don't include them in my list because they are not the most lucrative languages. What I mean by that, you might find a few jobs in them that pay very well, like upwards to 50, 60, 70, 100 cents per word, but you don't get a lot of jobs in them, right? So that's what I mean with lucrative. They might be highly paid, but you can't really make a good living with it only working in these languages. Of course you can. I'm not saying you can't, but in general, it's harder, right? There's always a couple of people who do it. But in my list, I incorporated the most lucrative languages, meaning that there is high demand and not too much supply. There are a lot of languages like Spanish, for example, like Arabic, where the supply is just extraordinarily high. So it's hard the demand gets fulfilled anyways, whether you're there or not. So it's hard to put these languages into a lucrative language, even though Arabic is coming up regularly as the highest paying language when you look at sources. But I purposely didn't include it because of the extremely high supply. So charging high doesn't necessarily mean a high income, right? There is a sweet spot that you need to find between high demand, nice rates, and relatively low supply. So you can be one of the only ones within your language, within your subject matter. These together are always key. They matter the most. So let's get into the list. I didn't rank them. These are just the 10 that come up most frequently as the most lucrative. We have English, which is almost always as one of either the source or the target, because it's just the world we live in. Most texts in the world are either English, Spanish, or French. So it's great to know. It's great to have English in your language combination at some point. So that's why it's also the top of my list immediately. Then we go on with German, French, Spanish, Portuguese. So these are the big European languages, but with Spanish and Portuguese, of course, you also have South America in there. And with French, you have basically all over the world in there. So it's technically a European language originally, but now you have widespread use of these languages. German is still staying one of the high value markets, let's say, due to its very good engineering, manufacturing, automotive industry. There is very much technical documentation and legal documentation out there in German, or needs to be German. A lot of specifications, so a lot of contracts, a lot of technical things is very highly paid in German. So that's why it's one of the strongest markets. French, you have a very big market in the international organizations, because it's always the main language, or at least next to English, one of the main language of all the international organizations. So lots of legal documents, lots of regulation, lots of policy. Also pharma and medical are very strong in the German locale. And Spanish and Portuguese, I already said, they are just huge in volume, but then there's also a lot of supply, but it's still not as bad as in Arabic. So you can still, with a nice clear niche, you can still have a very lucrative jobs in Spanish and Portuguese. Next, I also have Dutch in there. That's not technically a large language, right? It's relatively small, but I still took it in the list, not like Icelandic or Norwegian, for example, because it still has much more volume than these languages. And it's a very nice market, very highly paid, a lot of international minded companies in there that need Dutch on a day-to-day. So it's definitely a nice European language to have in your locker as well. Then we move to Asia. So we have Chinese, Japanese, Korean. These are the three big languages in Asia that are consistently lucrative. Especially Chinese and Japanese are really high value languages. Japanese, a lot of software and game localization, documentations, product localizations, technical documentations, etc. Also corporate and like a lot of investment, finance, corporate world is very popular in Japanese. So that's a great niche to have in that language. Chinese, obviously we have the manufacturing and supply of the entire world basically. So Mandarin Chinese is a very, very well-regarded and well-paid language. So it's a great resource to have. And Korean, relatively specific, but very innovative language, an innovative country. A lot of software, a lot of apps, a lot of futuristic mindset. The innovation is happening in Korea. So it's a great way to position yourself in that niche if Korean is part of your languages. And the last language included in my list is Russian. Russian is still a very big market. It's opening up again more and more. A lot of technical documentation, a lot of energy related energy related texts, very popular in Russia. So especially for people kind of in the gas, oil, energy related topics, working with Russian, very, very highly regarded and highly paid niche. So that's a great way to go as well. So I put them again on screen here, the top 10 most lucrative languages for translators. If you're not part of them, if you don't have them in your combinations, don't despair. It doesn't mean anything in that regard. You can still be in any other language the top man or the top woman. It just takes more specific marketing, more positioning, because it's harder to find the other jobs that are more niche, right? But because these are, as I said, the most lucrative, they have a nice balance between supply and demand. If you work in a very small language, it takes much more work to find the right people to talk to. But once you do, you need much less jobs, right? You probably need a third of the jobs if you work with Urdu than you work with a very common language like Spanish, right? Because hopefully, if it's the right client, the Urdu translations will be paid better. So I hope that makes sense. If you want to learn a language in the upcoming years to use in your language expert, language specialist business, it's probably one of the 10 that I showed you. Probably with one of the 10 languages I showed you, you have the best shot at a widespread job market that is still viable, but it's perfectly reasonable also to go for something like Greek or Albanian or something like that is much more niche. But if you know exactly what you want to do, which specialization, which language, and you want to focus exactly on that, that is still the most valuable and the most highly paid job you can have in the whole industry. So don't get discouraged if your language is not on the list. Let me know your language pairs in the comments. I'm very curious who is watching, and I see you next Monday with the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.